Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka. Two Friends, a short story by G. Maupassant, has been discussed in detail in the previous session. This story is described or prescribed for second semester BA General English, Bengaluru North University. In this presentation, the focus will be on characterization and themes prevalent in the short story Two Friends by G. Maupassant. I am Nandana NG, Assistant Professor of English, GFGC, Bagepalli. Let us have a look at the contents or what we can look forward in the course of this presentation. Learning objectives, which will give us an idea as to what we can look forward to. Session outcome, what can the student expect to be updated with by the end of the session. Recap of previous knowledge. This is of utmost importance as connecting the previous knowledge that we have gained in the course of the previous session with the present will help us understand the content much better. And then we shall focus on the two most important concepts in this presentation, characterization and themes that are prevalent in the story Two Friends. And finally, we'll have a recapitulation session followed by a small multiple choice question session. The learning objectives of this session. First, we shall try to define what is characterization, and then we shall focus on characterization in the story Two Friends. We'll proceed towards a theme or definition of a theme, and then what are the themes of the Two Friends short story. At the end of the session or the session outcome will be as follows. The student will be able to define characterization, identify characterization in the text. He or she will be in a better position to identify or define theme, determine theme in the text. Recapitulation. Let us now try to recapitulate what we learnt in the previous session. In the previous session, the elements of the plot was discussed in relation to the short story Two Friends by G. Maupassant. As we are familiar by now, the elements of the plot are as follows. Exposition. Exposition is the beginning part. It gives us a background of the setting, the place where it occurs, who are the characters and where it all starts. Or you can even say that exposition is the beginning point. In exposition, Monsieur Morisot, a watchmaker, bumps into an old friend, Monsieur Sauvage, a draper with whom he used to go fishing before the war. They reminisce their pre-war fishing days. Next comes conflict. Conflict is a sort of a knot. If a story proceeds smoothly, then there is no plot. What is the conflict? What is that knot? What is that problem there? When the two friends meet, they lament. In fact, they are very sad that they are not able to go fishing like they used to do before the war, and that too especially on such a nice day. The occurrence of this thought itself in their minds gives rise to the conflict. And next, rising action. The rising action refers to the part wherein some sort of action takes the story forward through the help of the characters. When the two friends go to a nearby cafe and while having a drink, recklessly, that is carelessly, Monsieur Sauvage suggests fishing. A sudden impulsive suggestion, and this is actually agreed to upon by the other. And they even decide to seek the help of a French colonel to go to their fishing spot. So the rising action is when these two people decide on the spot to go fishing, and they decide to take the help of a French colonel. Events increasing conflict. So there are other events which add to the rising action and conflict. When the two friends take the password from the French colonel and they cross the countryside and they go to their old fishing spot in occupied territory, they start fishing peacefully. But all good things do come to an end. When the Prussians showed up, that is when the enemy soldiers showed up, the two friends stopped fishing. The Prussians pointed guns at them and asked for the password. So these are all the events which increase the conflict. Climax can be said to be the peak of any tragedy or the culmination, or wherein everything comes to an end, the action that has been meant to be happening there. So what happens in the climax? The two friends were killed by the Prussians because they didn't say anything. That is to say, when the Prussian general forced both the friends to reveal the password to enter the city, both of them declined under tremendous pressure. As they did not betray their country, nor did they divulge the password, they were killed. Falling action refers to the part of the story that happens after the climax. After the two friends were executed, the soldiers, upon the orders of the Prussian general, tied Morisot's and Sauvitz's bodies to rocks and threw them into the water. Resolution, the final part, you can say that all the loose ends are tied up here. But here the resolution is rather ironical. Noticing the fish the men had caught, the Prussian officer orders the fish to be cooked and goes back to smoking his pipe. This actually shows the cold-bloodedness of the Prussian officer here. Now let us focus on the main concept in this presentation. What is characterization? Characterization is a literary tool which was coined in the mid 15th century. To define further, it is a literary device in literature which highlights and explains the details about a character in a story. Characters are of utmost importance. In fact, characters make up the story. Without good characters, without all sorts of characters, without round, flat characters, etc., as you can say that, the story doesn't survive. So, characters are of utmost importance. After introducing the character, the writer often talks about his behavior. In fact, we can say that the writer usually uses the characters as his own mouthpiece to express his views. In fact, you can say character is the mouthpiece through which, or the medium through which, the speaker is able to express his point of view. As the story progresses, the thought processes of the characters are revealed in a dramatic manner. In the story Two Friends, Maupassant himself hated war. That is, the author himself hated war. This he made it clear. This attitude towards war which the author had is expressed by the two friends, Monsieur Morisot and Monsieur Savage. They too did not like war. So you can say that the characters of Monsieur Morisot and Monsieur Savage has been used by the author or speaker to express his point of view against war. Now let us have a look at the characters involved in the story. The protagonists, that is the primary characters, that is positive characters as you may say, would be the two friends, Monsieur Morisot and Monsieur Sauvage. The antagonists are opposite to the protagonists or the opposite forces. The antagonists would be the Franco-Prussian War and the Prussian general and soldiers. Observe, the war also is considered as a character here. Now let us go in detail. First, let us concentrate on Monsieur Morisot. Monsieur Morisot is a Frenchman and his profession was a watchmaker. Before the war, he was actually earning well, and only during the weekends, and that is only on a Sunday, he used to go out fishing with his chum. But then due to the war, the demand for new watches had fallen down, and as a result, he too was unemployed. And when he was walking in the boulevard, literally he was bored, hungry and depressed. He is, to look at, he is quite tall, and also he is an avid fisherman. He is also enrolled in the National Guard. He was bored, hungry and depressed when he was walking along the boulevard, when by chance he bumps into an old friend, Monsieur Sauvage, with whom he used to go fishing before the war. He is the one who agrees to Sauvage's suggestion to go fishing. So you can say that Monsieur Morisot is also as reckless as Monsieur Sauvage. But overall you can say that Monsieur Morisot is very loyal and he does not betray his friend nor country. Monsieur Sauvage, he is also a Frenchman, but compared to Monsieur Morisot, he is stout, that is short and plump. By nature, he is quite jolly, he is a little man, and by profession, he is a draper in the Rue Notre Dame les Lorettes. A draper means, as we discussed in the glossary part, a tailor. And as again, due to the war, he too hasn't got much of work now. And he too is an ardent fisherman. He too has enrolled in the National Guard. By chance, he bumps into an old friend, Monsieur Morisot, with whom he used to go fishing before the war. Recklessly, impulsively, on the spot suggests fishing because he knows a French colonel. He is very sure if he approaches the French colonel will provide him a password which will help them to go to the fishing spot. Maybe this reckless idea in Soviet's mind was the one which led them both to their miserable ends. All in all, he too is very loyal and he does not betray his friend nor country. Among the antagonists, the Prussian general has been quite elaborately described there. He comes actually at the end of the story. The Prussian general was fairly cold-blooded. That is very obvious when you look at the way he behaves with the two friends. In his description, in his physical description, he is described as a shaggy looking giant. Maybe he's quite tall and also he has a gigantic personality, but also shaggy looking. That is obvious as the war has been going on for a lot of time. Maybe personal hygiene has not been given importance to. When this Prussian general comes to that spot and he sees the two friends fishing, he doesn't even give them a chance to explain themselves. He immediately assumed that the two friends were spies. He executed the friends when they refused to betray. But before executing the friends, he did talk to them, but then it was under his own presumption. He spoke to both the friends and told them, I presume you are spies, and I want you to give the password. When they both declined, he used the divide and conquer strategy, wherein he took each of the friend individually aside and asked him. Even Monsieur Morisot and Monsieur Savage he spoke to individually and privately, but both declined to give out the password. And when nothing is going to work, or when he realized that it's not going to work, he gave the orders for the two friends to be executed. But the ironical part or the strange part is after the execution of the two friends, the general showed no emotion whatsoever. In fact, he ordered his soldiers to fry the fish the two friends had caught for him. And look at his sentence there. Fry me these little creatures straight away while they're still alive. They'll be delicious, said the general. It just showed that even after killing two innocent people, all he was thinking about was the fish and how good they would taste like. So you can say that the Prussian general was fairly cold-blooded. War also can be considered as a primary character in this story. The war was so important in this story. Remember, everything happens in the backdrop of the war that it has become one of the primary characters. Because the war has stopped the two friends from doing what they love, fishing. If not for the war, maybe this entire thing would not have happened at all. If they had the regular routine of going fishing on Sundays, maybe this impulsive, reckless behavior on their part would not have occurred. Without the war, they wouldn't have been so desperate to go, and even if they were drunk and went, they wouldn't have got killed by the Prussian soldiers. Now let us proceed towards theme. What is a theme? Let us try to define a theme. Definition of a theme. A theme can be defined as a main idea or an underlying meaning of a literary work which may be stated directly or indirectly. There are two types of themes, major theme and a minor theme. A major theme is an idea that a writer repeats in his literary work, significant idea in the work. In fact, here in the story, the two friends, we can say that war is a significant theme because everything happens against the backdrop of the war. Minor theme. It is an idea that appears in the work briefly, giving way to another minor theme. Now let us concentrate on the themes in the short story Two Friends. The first primary theme would be the horrors of war that is described here. In an attempt to escape besieged Paris for a few hours, Morisot and Sauvage instead find themselves directly confronted by war's horrors when they are captured by the Prussians. Yes, that's true. The two friends didn't have much to desire for. All they wanted was they were already feeling so miserable, bored, hungry. They were literally, they were so desperate for a change. All they wanted was a few hours of peaceful fishing, and as they went in search of that, they ended up being killed by the Prussians. In the story, we can see that war rages all around Messieurs Morisot and Savage, and by the end of the story, they feel the full force of its horror. In fact, when the story begins, we can see that both are still alive, more or less. The war hasn't touched them or impacted them directly. But by the end of the story, when they are executed by the Prussian general, we can say that they have fallen victim of to the war. Paris, the city under siege by the Prussian army, and food is limited at best. People eat what they can, and the narrator implies that it extends to sparrows and rats, which are growing scarce throughout the city. This is rather sad. Due to the war, food was scarce or food was not available, and as a result, people had also started eating most of the small animals or the domestic animals that were available, like sparrows and rats. This is not clearly stated, but it is implied in the sentence growing scarce. Scarce as in a shortage. If these rats and sparrows were not to be seen, it was implied that the people were eating them when they did not have other food to have. Heading towards their favorite fishing spot, both the friends are well aware of the devastation war has brought to the countryside. The entire countryside is deserted, that is, no one else is there, and it is completely silent. The Prussians have been pillaging the land. Pillaging means destroying the land for months, depriving Paris of its food sources. Yes, look, this is again one of the other or the side effects of the war there. The Prussians had besieged Paris, and the surroundings or the outskirts of Paris, the Prussians had taken over, and they had literally destroyed all the sources of food. In the midst of the fishing trip, the two friends discuss the foolishness of war, its inhumanity and its seeming inevitability. They lament that they will never be free. This discussion between the two friends while they are on their last fishing expedition there, this can be said that this is a conversation which the author has deliberately inserted there to express his point of view about how war disrupts lives and how it destroys lives. The narrator uses that moment to insert his own reflection on the horror of war, observing that the cannonballs not only demolish houses and reduce the lives of men to powder, but it also steals dreams, hopes and happiness, causing endless woe and suffering to soldiers and their loved ones. Yes, everybody is impacted by the horrors of war, not only the soldiers, even civilians for that matter. The war devastates more than the land and the body, it also ravages the mind. That's true. When you are in the middle of a war, you cannot say that it's not impacting me, I've got nothing to lose. It not only destroys the land and the body, physical injuries, but it also impacts the mind, because excessive exposure to violence can take a toll. The two men are willing to accept the consequences, even their own deaths, the two friends, for they refuse to provide the French password that would allow the Prussians entry into Paris. The war has called them into direct service to their country. They are not soldiers, but they are not traitors or cowards either. So they willingly and bravely become casualties of war. Yes, you can say that war has literally propelled the two friends into the role of loyal citizens. In the beginning of the story, they had no inkling that by the end of the day, a situation like this would occur to them, or they would be in such a circumstance wherein their loyalty towards the country would be tested. But when the test did occur, they passed with flying colors. They did not betray their country. The full force of the horror of war falls directly upon Morisot and Sauvage, for they are captured by the Prussians and executed as spies. Let us go towards to the second theme, the most prominent theme here, loyalty and courage. Loyalty means being loyal towards another person or country for that matter, and courage is that positive trait which one displays in times of adverse circumstances. Morisot and Sauvage bravely remain loyal to each other and to France, refusing to give the Prussian officer the Parisian password. Morisot and Sauvage remain silent and loyal. It requires significant courage. It's as if they knew they are going to be killed, so they just accepted. They did not discuss it amongst themselves. They did not, encourage each other to be silent. They just decided on their own that they are not going to reveal the password, and they displayed significant courage. They are looking directly at death. Though they were looking directly at death, yet they chose to accept it rather than betray their country. The Prussian then asks a simple but powerful question. You have relations, I presume? Yet they don't cave in. Look at the sentence. This is the sentence wherein the Prussian is implying you have relations, as if to say you have a family. So he is dangling the emotional card of a family. Yet both the friends did not give in. They did not reveal the password. So they did not betray the country. When asked privately, Morisot does not give in and neither does Sauvage. Maybe the Prussian general thought if he takes each of the person aside individually and tempts them, give them some sort of encouragement, maybe they will reveal the password. Maybe the one friend will go against the other friend to save his life. But then he realized that both were adamant. They did not reveal the password. In their resolve, they remain loyal to their friendship as well as their country. They will not betray each other any more than they will betray France. Neither man gives in. Their friendship holds even as they grasp each other's hand, bid each other farewell, and turn to face death together. The other most important theme that can be seen in the short story Two Friends is friendship. In fact, the story's title immediately suggests the theme of friendship. Morisot and Savage were fishing friends who spent their time together mostly in silence. They used to just focus on the task at hand. In fact, they were casual friends. They were not those good friends as such. They were casual friends. And when the story starts, they accidentally bump into each other. Over drinks, when Sauvage suggests a fishing jaunt, Morisot is quickly to agree and the two friends set out. It is as if both friends have similar wavelength. The readers learn that these two men need not speak much, for they understood each other perfectly without the aid of words, having similar tastes and feelings. This can also be seen at the end of the story when both refuse to divulge the password and just stand there loyal and brave towards their country. Their thoughts and fears are perfectly in tune as they cross the deserted countryside on the way to the river. Morisot and Savage turn part of their attention to a discussion of war and politics. The two friends mostly agree with each other. Usually when two friends start a conversation or a discussion, it tends to go haywire, one becoming angry with the other. But here we can see that though at times the friends disagreed on something or the other, yet they did not have that negativity. At the end of the story, the friendship between Morisot and Savage faces its greatest challenge ever when the Prussian officer takes each aside individually and tempts him to betray his friend by giving the password. While the friendship between Morisot and Savage at first may appear casual, it ultimately proves strong enough to survive even the threat of a certain death. Let us try to recapitulate what we have learned through the course of this session. The definition of characterization. Characterization is a literary device to highlight and explain the details about a character in a story. And then we discussed in detail the character sketch of Monsieur Morisot, Monsieur Sauvage, and the Prussian officer. Theme. Theme is defined as a main idea or an underlying meaning of a literary work which may be stated directly or indirectly. And the themes in the short story Two Friends are horrors of war, friendship, loyalty, and courage. Now let us assess ourselves with a small multiple choice question. What is happening in Paris at the time of the story? In the beginning of the story, in the very first paragraph, the description is very clear. Paris was in the throes of famine and it was also sieged, or it was also besieged by the Prussians. So the options provided are war, famine, both, or none of the above. And the answer is option C, both. War and famine, both were happening in Paris at the time of the story. The Prussian officer is described as meek, small, stout, or a shaggy looking giant. And the answer is option D, shaggy looking giant. The Prussian officer uses the dash strategy unsuccessfully. And what was his strategy with the two friends? Negotiation, divide and conquer, rational talk, or humorous. And the answer is option B, divide and conquer. What were the last words of Monsieur Morisot to his friend? Goodbye, help, farewell, or none of the above? And the answer is option A, goodbye. How many shots were fired at the two friends? When the Prussian officer gave the order to his soldiers to execute the two friends were made to stand and the soldiers shot at them. And how many shots were fired? 100, 50, 78, or 12 shots. And the answer is option D, 12. The references for the presentation. Thank you.